I used to believe Christmas Eve had a rhythm of its own. Every year carried the same comforting sequence. Warm lights in the living room. The scent of cinnamon from the kitchen. A table prepared long before dinner. I walked into the house expecting all of this. I even carried a gift in my hand, wrapped clumsily because I wanted the surprise to remain mine alone. I imagined her face lighting up when she saw it. I thought we would sit, talk, maybe laugh. I was wrong. My mistake was assuming peace was waiting for me behind the front door. She stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. Her eyes looked at me with a distance I had never seen before. It felt as if I had walked into a stranger's home. There was no greeting, no smile, nothing. She simply said I needed to pack my things. I laughed at first. I thought it was a twisted joke or a poorly executed attempt at humor. Her voice did not tremble. Her jaw did not move. Only her eyes told me she meant every word. My laughter died instantly. She walked toward the bedroom and pointed at my suitcase. I asked her what was happening. She replied that I had become a weight on her life and she refused to carry it any longer. I stood frozen, unable to make sense of what she had just said. My hands shook as I opened the closet. I packed random clothes without thinking. Her silence was louder than any accusation I could imagine. She waited near the door, holding it open as if I were a delivery that needed to be removed before midnight. I noticed something else. Her wedding ring was gone. I had never seen her hand bare since the day we married. She took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and repeated that I had to leave. My legs moved without my consent. I took the suitcase and stepped closer to the door. My heart pounded as if it was running ahead of me. I asked her again why she was doing this. She replied that I was ruining Christmas. Her voice had no anger. It was pure dismissal, the kind that crushes more than any shout could. Then her sister appeared from behind her. She was leaning against the kitchen counter, holding a glass of something expensive, dressed as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. She looked at me with the satisfaction of someone watching a scene she had rehearsed. She laughed, not loudly, but with enough cruelty to make me feel smaller than my shadow. She added a final comment about how some men never realize when they have overstayed their welcome. That sentence was sharper than any blade. I walked out into the night with a single bag. Snow covered the street. The cold bit my fingers immediately. My breath formed small clouds and disappeared. The door closed behind me without hesitation. The house where I had loved, argued, dreamed, and forgiven me for years was now sealed as if I was never meant to enter it in the first place. As I stood there trying to understand how a life can collapse between one heartbeat and the next, I saw her. A woman with no shoes. Her feet were pressed directly onto the snow, as if frost had no power over her. She looked at me, not with pity, but with recognition. She whispered my name. I was certain I had never seen her before. She stepped closer and told me that I must not sleep outside tonight because this night would decide who I become. Her voice carried certainty. In that moment, I felt something I could not explain. My life had ended inside that house, yet something else had just begun. I stood in front of her, frozen by confusion more than the winter air. My instinct urged me to walk away. Any sensible person would avoid a barefoot woman in the snow who whispered names she was not supposed to know. I convinced myself she was confused or suffering from something I did not understand. My body began to move toward the main road. I planned to find a hotel or at least a warm place where I could sit and process the disaster that had unfolded in my home. I heard her footsteps behind me, yet the snow beneath her feet made no sound. I turned, irritated and exhausted. I told her that I was not interested in conversations with strangers. The woman smiled and spoke my childhood nickname. Hearing it in her voice felt like being thrown backward in time. No one used that name anymore. My mother was the last person who called me that, and she had been gone for years. I felt anger rising inside me. I asked her who she was. She ignored my question and mentioned the exact location of the scar under my shirt. A scar I received as a child after falling from a tree. I had never told my wife about it. For a moment, I wondered whether my mind was playing tricks on me. Her eyes held no fear. She recited a conversation my wife and I had last month. Word for word, the same tone, the same pauses. A conversation that took place in the privacy of her bedroom. I felt the cold tighten around my throat. I tried to deny it, but the truth echoed inside me. She knew things that were never written, never shared, never repeated. My heart raced. I wanted to believe this was an elaborate prank. Yet her calm expression dismissed that possibility completely. She stood as if she had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. I stepped back, tried to regain control of my breath. She did not move. She told me my wife never intended to argue with me today. She had already decided the outcome. The eviction was not spontaneous. It was scheduled. My presence was a piece on someone else's board. Her words pierced the last illusions I had left. Suddenly, the laughter of my wife's sister made sense. The confidence in her smile. The absence of shock. They knew the script before I arrived home. I had been living in a story I did not write. I asked the woman how she knew all this. She walked toward a street lamp, and a light revealed her face. Her features were striking, yet unfamiliar. She looked like someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere. She continued speaking without emotion. She explained that I had been removed, not abandoned. My wife had not expelled me because of a temporary frustration. I had reached a point in my life where my presence threatened what others had constructed behind my back. My departure was simply the last step in a process I never noticed. I wanted to argue. I wanted to reject every word she said. Yet a strange clarity settled inside me. Something had been wrong for months. Little gestures, altered routines, conversations that sounded polite but empty. I remembered moments when my wife avoided eye contact, the unexplained purchases, the sudden interest of her sister in matters that had nothing to do with her. The puzzle pieces I ignored were now forming an image I could no longer deny. The woman extended her hand, not as a request, but as an instruction. She told me I had been chosen, not punished. She claimed that tonight was not about loss. It was about revelation. I felt an unspoken force pulling me toward her, not physically, but mentally. I understood something unsettling. If she knew my past and my present, she might also know what was coming. My night had stopped being a tragedy. It had become a threshold, and she was the only one who knew what waited beyond it. The woman's words followed me like an echo. I walked beside her, not because I trusted her, but because her knowledge had pierced a part of me that demanded answers. Each step in the snow uncovered memories I had buried under routine. I once believed my marriage was a partnership. Now I wondered if I had ever been anything more than a placeholder in a story someone else choreographed. My mind drifted back to moments that once seemed harmless. I remember decisions made without my involvement, vacations planned without asking if my schedule permitted, purchases arriving at our doorstep that I had never heard of. I would raise questions, and she would reply that it was easier this way. I interpreted her choices as confidence. Now I saw them as exclusion. There were evenings when I entered a room and conversations stopped abruptly. My name disappeared from sentences. Laughter faded into silence. I told myself it was stress or fatigue. I convinced myself people shared less when I was present because I interrupted their rhythm. Tonight, I saw the truth. I was not interrupting anything. I was never meant to be included. Her sister became a constant presence. She arrived unannounced and stayed for hours. At first, I welcomed the visits. I thought family involvement created stability. Slowly, her voice began replacing mine in matters related to my home. She suggested where furniture should be moved. She influenced what meals were served. She even proposed changes in our plans without acknowledging my presence. My wife encouraged it with smiles I misread as kindness. A memory surfaced with painful clarity. It was a dinner at our house months earlier. The table was ready. Candlelight flickered across carefully arranged plates. I believed it was a celebration of a milestone in my career. My wife invited her sister and a few friends. I thought they would congratulate me. They spent the evening discussing ventures, investments, and opportunities as if my work did not exist. My achievements were invisible. I sat there, nodding at conversations that flowed around me instead of toward me. I felt like furniture rather than a man. My wife noticed my silence and dismissed it with a comment about me being sensitive. Later that night, I overheard a conversation in the kitchen. Her sister's voice carried a tone of triumph. She spoke about how some men accept whatever they are given, as if ambition were optional. My wife replied with a laugh that did not belong to the woman I once knew. She said people rarely notice when they lose influence in their own homes. I stood behind the wall, listening, unable to confront them. I told myself it was stress. I refused to see the truth. Pride disguised itself as patience. The seeds of jealousy were planted that evening. My wife did not resent my flaws. She resented my potential. I noticed how her expression changed when others acknowledged my skills. Her praise became scarce. Compliments felt rationed. Recognition transformed into competition. I confused tension with passion. I mistook rivalry for misunderstanding. I believed love could survive anything. I never considered the possibility that one partner can silently hope the other remains small. The barefoot woman watched my silence as I walked. She did not interrupt my thoughts. She knew I was reconstructing the events I had dismissed. My marriage had not collapsed on Christmas Eve. It had reached its climax. Every moment where I surrendered authority, ignored intuition, and allowed myself to be replaced had pushed me toward that night. The eviction was not spontaneous. It was the final scene of a story that never belonged to me. For the first time, I understood something painful. I had not been betrayed. I had been outgrown by a plan that did not require my existence. My marriage had ended long before I stepped into the snow. Christmas Eve was merely the moment the curtain fell. The woman walked ahead of me without hesitation. Her pace was steady, as if every street, every corner, every shadow belonged to her. The snow thickened, yet she showed no discomfort. I followed her reluctantly, torn between fear and curiosity. My breath formed clouds that disappeared as quickly as they appeared. After several minutes, we reached a house standing alone at the end of a narrow road. Its windows were broken, and its walls seemed exhausted by time. No lights flickered inside. The place looked abandoned, forgotten by everyone except the woman who now pushed its door open. The smell of dust filled the air the moment I stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath my shoes, and the faint echo of my own footsteps made me shiver. She guided me to the living room. A single piece of furniture stood there, a wooden box resting on a table. The box was ancient, covered in a layer of dust thick enough to suggest no one had opened it for years. It felt out of place, as if it had been waiting specifically for my arrival. The woman pointed toward it, then stepped back. I approached the box slowly. My fingers brushed the top, leaving a clear mark in the dust. I hesitated before opening it. Inside, I found a stack of envelopes. Each one carried my name in handwriting I did not recognize. My heart tightened. Something about the sight of my name repeated so many times made me feel exposed, as though someone had been studying my life without my consent. I lifted the first envelope. Inside was a photograph of me at a cafe, taken from a distance. The date printed at the corner revealed it was from more than a year ago. Another envelope contained a printed transcript of a phone call I made to my wife when she was traveling. Even the subtle sighs and pauses were recorded. Someone had monitored my conversations. A third envelope contained receipts for purchases I never made, along with my signature perfectly replicated. I felt my knees weaken. My identity was being rewritten without my knowledge. The woman watched me as I opened each envelope. She did not speak. Her silence became heavier than any explanation she could have offered. My pulse quickened as I pulled out another document. This time, my name appeared next to a statement claiming I had voluntarily transferred access to certain financial accounts. I remembered nothing of this. My signature appeared flawless, identical to the one I used on legal documents. Someone had prepared my disappearance long before I realized anything was wrong. I reached the last envelope. Its weight was different. I opened it carefully and found a legal contract signed by my wife and her sister. The words were cold and calculated. I read that my removal from the house was part of an agreed strategy. They planned every step from emotional distance to financial exclusion. Their signatures confirmed a shared intention to erase my presence and ensure I had no claim on anything we once built together. They even included clauses outlining how to manipulate me psychologically so I would walk away quietly, My hands trembled. The betrayal I felt on Christmas Eve was nothing compared to this revelation. My wife had not expelled me out of sudden frustration. She had executed a plan written long before she looked me in the eye today. Her sister was not an accomplice by accident. She was a partner in a scheme designed to strip me of my identity and leave me with no ground to stand on. The woman stepped closer and closed the box gently. She told me this was only the beginning. Proof was the foundation of truth. Emotion could be dismissed, but documents spoke for themselves. I had not been defeated by love. I had been targeted. The pain that had crushed me earlier now transformed into something sharper. My loss was no longer personal. It was strategic, and for the first time, I realized I was no longer a victim. I was evidence. I barely slept. The images of the house, the envelopes, and the signatures haunted me through the night. I watched the snow fall outside the window of the small motel room where I stayed. Every snowflake seemed to carry a question. How long had this been happening without me noticing? The barefoot woman had disappeared before dawn, leaving me with more certainty than comfort. She did not tell me what to do. She did not need to. The documents inside that box had already written my next step for me. I woke up early and dressed slowly, as if preparing for a ceremony rather than a confrontation. My hand shook once, then steadied. I folded the most incriminating documents carefully, placed them in an envelope, and slipped it inside my coat. I stared at myself in the mirror before leaving. For years, I had believed silence protected peace. Now I understood silence was the weapon used against me. The streets were empty, yet Christmas decorations still glowed in windows. People believed the season softened hearts. I had learned it sometimes revealed what hearts were made of. When I reached my in-laws' house, voices floated through the door. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. The same scene I once imagined myself celebrating. My pulse slowed. I rang the bell. The room fell quiet when I stepped inside. Every eye widened, not in welcome, but in disbelief. My wife stood near the fireplace. Her smile vanished, as if someone had shut off a light inside her. Her sister dropped a fork. Her father frowned, trying to understand how a man they believed erased had returned. Her mother's expression carried something unexpected. Not anger, fear. No one spoke. I did not raise my voice. I walked to the dining table and placed the thick envelope in the center. The paper made a soft sound that echoed louder than any accusation could. My wife attempted a casual tone, asking why I had come back. I replied that I had forgotten something important. The room tensed. I opened the envelope and spread the documents slowly, giving each person a clear view of the signatures that destroyed their confidence a moment ago. Their faces changed one by one. My wife's laughter died first. The arrogance that wrapped her words only a day earlier evaporated. Her sister leaned forward, her lips parted, unable to form a sentence. The same woman who laughed when I was thrown out now stared at her own signature as if it were a ghost. Her father asked what he was looking at. I pointed to a specific clause. His eyes narrowed. He was a businessman. He recognized traps even when they were written with elegant language. His wife gasped softly and sat down. I mentioned the date written on the bottom of the contract. The day they decided to erase me. A date no one expected me to know. The room froze. My wife reached for the document, but her hand stopped halfway, as if touching it would burn her. She tried to speak, yet her voice cracked. Her sister looked around, searching for a place to hide from her own decisions. Her father leaned back in his chair, stunned. Her mother whispered a prayer, though she did not finish it. I remained calm. I explained that the plan was not emotional, but administrative. They created a timeline to remove me while maintaining their image. They viewed me as a variable, not a person. The silence deepened. Their scheme had been perfect until truth joined the table. No one apologized. No one dared. I stepped back from the documents. I did not accuse them. I did not demand explanations. I simply allowed them to witness themselves without the masks they once wore. For the first time, they were forced to look at me without underestimating who I was. I walked toward the door. My wife called my name, but I did not turn. I understood something with absolute clarity. I had not returned to recover a place. I had returned to resign from a role I never applied for. And in that moment, the power shifted forever. I I stepped outside, expecting the cold air to numb the chaos inside my chest, yet something held me still on the porch. The door opened behind me. My mother-in-law called my name quietly, as if she feared someone might hear her siding with the wrong person. Her voice lacked the arrogance I had seen in the others. It carried an exhaustion that made me turn around despite every instinct urging me to walk away. She asked me to sit with her in the small garden behind the house. Christmas lights flickered weakly on the bushes, casting unclear shapes over the snow. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and looked at me with eyes that had held secrets longer than anyone else. I expected blame or excuses. Instead, she surprised me with a confession that shifted the entire weight of the night. She whispered that she always knew her daughter was difficult. She admitted her daughter did not believe in partnership. She believed in possession. She said her daughter chose relationships the same way others chose investments. A man was useful only if he elevated her status. Love, in her world, was a tool, not a feeling. Her tone remained calm, but her hands trembled slightly. She confessed that she never imagined her daughter would go this far. She assumed marriage would tame her, not sharpen her. I listened in silence, unsure whether her regret came from empathy or fear of consequences. She studied the documents I had left on the table earlier. She recognized every name, every signature, and every line that led to tonight. She told me the plan did not surprise her. The scale of its cruelty did. She claimed she tried warning others, but manipulation disguised itself as ambition, and people applauded ambition more than they questioned it. Then she said something that made my pulse stop for a moment. She told me her daughter never wanted a husband. She wanted an asset she could control, reshape, and eventually discard when something more profitable appeared. Her voice did not rise or tremble. It was the tone of someone who finally decided truth was safer than silence. She confessed that every man her daughter dated before me left feeling confused, diminished, and inferior. None of them believed they had been abandoned. They believed they had failed. That was her daughter's talent. She ensured departure looked like defeat. The admission did not comfort me. It deepened the wound. I wondered why she allowed the marriage to continue if she saw the danger. She lowered her eyes before answering. She said parents often hope marriage will cure flaws they failed to address. She believed responsibility would teach compassion. Instead, it sharpened cruelty. She paused for a long moment, then looked at me again with a different expression, a cautious one. She asked if I remembered the barefoot woman. My breath caught. I did not expect her to mention her. She nodded slowly, as if confirming a private suspicion. She told me the barefoot woman had appeared once before, many years earlier, during another crisis her family tried to bury. She said the woman did not arrive without purpose. She appeared when someone reached a crossroads they did not know how to navigate. My mother-in-law spoke the next words with reverence. She said some people believe the barefoot woman is not a stranger, but a guide. She comes only when someone is about to lose everything or find themselves. Her arrival means something within a person is ready to awaken. She leaned closer and whispered that the woman never returns unless the person she follows ignored warnings the first time. I felt a chill that did not come from the weather. My story had begun long before I realized I was in it. My mother-in-law rose slowly and walked back inside the house without saying goodbye. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not defend her daughter. She left me with a truth I could no longer escape. I had not been watched by one enemy. I had been observed by someone waiting for me to finally see what I had become. The hours after my mother-in-law's confession passed like scenes that refused to fade. I returned to the motel with the envelope under my arm. I sat at the small wooden desk, turned on the lamp, and spread every document in front of me. The papers felt heavier than they should. They carried a truth I had sensed but never articulated. My marriage had not been a romance. It had been a transaction. I examined the signatures closely. My name repeated on forms I never saw. Consent appeared where I never gave it. Financial authorizations carried the same handwriting I used on holiday cards and official notices. The imitation was flawless. Each signature was a brick in a wall designed to isolate me. The more I read, the clearer it became. I had not married a woman searching for a partner. I had married someone who identified opportunity. There were bank transfers to accounts I did not recognize. The amounts were large enough to raise suspicion, yet small enough to remain unnoticed. The dates coincided with times when my wife insisted I take breaks from work or spend time with her family. While I sat at gatherings believing I was being welcomed, she transferred pieces of my financial stability into places where I had no access. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. It did not attack my wealth. It dismantled my identity. There were notes written in her handwriting describing strategies, not emotions. She listed my strengths as if they were inventory. She identified who admired me, who depended on me, and who feared me. She noted how to weaken each connection. Compliments were rationed. Encouragement appeared only when it redirected my focus away from myself. Gradually, I adapted to a dynamic where her approval became the only currency that mattered. I mistook control for care. My memories took on a new meaning. The early affection I once cherished had been a negotiation disguised as devotion. Every touch, every word, every gaze now looked rehearsed. I remembered moments when she insisted I stop talking about new ideas or projects. She would say ambition distracted from our marriage. I believed she wanted closeness. Now I saw it was about containment. A man who questions his worth cannot negotiate. A man who doubts himself is easier to shape. The documents revealed even more. She had prepared explanations for my behavior in case anyone questioned her actions. She described me as unstable, sensitive, unreliable with decisions. She positioned herself as the reasonable partner burdened with responsibility. Conversations I once thought were misunderstandings were actually rehearsals. She introduced narratives I eventually repeated because I believed them. I was not living a lie. I was maintaining someone else's version of my life. One folder contained projected outcomes. She forecasted how our finances, reputation, and social circle would change once I was removed. It was shocking to see my absence calculated with the precision of a business merger. She did not intend to separate from me in pain. She intended to eliminate me in silence. She plotted a future where I disappeared without consequence, leaving her free to use my contributions as her foundation. I leaned back in the chair and studied the pages again. Every detail proved a truth I resisted. My wife had not fallen out of love. She had never entered it. I was not a mistake. I was an interim stage. I was never selected for companionship. I was placed in a position she could leverage. The marriage vows I once held sacred were not promises between two hearts. There were clauses in a contract I never negotiated. For the first time, I understood why the barefoot woman appeared. My anger had been misplaced. I was not mourning a relationship. I was waking from a transaction. Love could heal wounds. Contracts demanded outcomes. I had been the only participant unaware that feelings were irrelevant. My marriage was not broken. It was completed, and I was finally free to see the architecture I once lived inside. The motel room felt smaller with every hour I spent inside it. The documents had revealed intentions, but I sensed something deeper remained hidden. My instincts, once ignored, now guided me with unsettling precision. I examined the box again, this time searching not for papers, but for anything that might connect the plan to a motive. The lid was thicker than the sides. I lifted it and noticed a small metallic hinge that did not match the wood. I pressed it gently, and a compartment slid open. Inside was a USB drive. A single red sticker on it read, "Play last." My pulse quickened. Whoever placed it there wanted timing. I inserted it into my laptop. A single audio file appeared, named with a date from 6 months earlier. I clicked play. The screen turned black, and then I heard her voice. My wife. Calm, composed, confident. At first, I thought it was another conversation I had forgotten. Then I heard the other voice. Her sister. Their tone was not affectionate. It was transactional. They discussed details of my life as if they were discussing a product. My wife outlined the sequence of steps that would lead me to isolation. Her sister listened with unsettling excitement. She asked about the accounts, the timing, and the psychological approach. She did not question the morality. She questioned efficiency. My breath caught when she asked what would happen once I was removed. My wife replied that I would adapt. I always adapted. I felt anger rise in my chest until her sister spoke again. Her voice changed. Not sharp, not cruel, but envious. She mentioned my career, my ideas, and the attention I received from others. She spoke about how people valued my presence in ways that irritated her. She said I made things look easy. Her jealousy had not been about possessions. It had been personal. I was not the obstacle. I was the target. The audio continued. Her sister admitted she had always wanted to stand where her sister stood. She wanted the admiration, the financial security, the perception of superiority. She confessed something even more disturbing. She did not want my wife to succeed. She wanted to replace her completely. My wife laughed, unaware of the meaning behind the words. I heard her say that I was never the goal. I was leverage. Her sister grew silent for a moment. Then she said something that froze my entire body. She whispered that she would be the one standing next to me when everything was over. The room spun. I understood something horrifying. My eviction was not just a plan to remove me. It was a way to destabilize my wife. Her sister had orchestrated the emotional explosion, not merely to hurt me, but to break the foundation of the marriage so she could occupy the pieces left behind. The laughter on Christmas Eve had not been mockery. It had been triumph. A celebration of a puzzle she believed was complete. The recording continued. I heard conversations about influence, image, and timing. My wife believed she was controlling the narrative. Her sister was controlling her. She had introduced doubts, fed insecurities, and fueled resentment. She turned my wife's ambition into a weapon aimed at both of us. Every signature forged, every bank transfer hidden, every harsh word spoken had been engineered to fracture the connection between us until nothing remained. My chest tightened as the final words of the recording played. Her sister said she would wait for the moment my wife collapsed under the consequences of her own decisions. She claimed the world admired confidence, not wisdom. When confidence crumbled, she intended to step over the ruins and become the woman people respected. She wanted everything her sister possessed. She wanted me because she believed I was the proof of value her sister never deserved. The file ended abruptly. The silence afterward felt alive. I stared at the screen, realizing the truth was more devastating than betrayal. I had not been removed because I was weak. I had been removed because I was valuable. I closed the laptop slowly, comforted by one unexpected thing. Their strategy had succeeded until tonight. Now I held the one thing none of them anticipated. I understood the enemy, and it was not the woman who threw me out. It was the woman who laughed. I left the motel after listening to the recording. The world outside felt different, as if every light and shadow had intentions of their own. Snow fell softly, yet the cold did not touch me. My mind replayed the voices I had heard. Betrayal no longer felt like an accident. It felt engineered. But even then, I sensed the night was not finished with me. As I reached the main road, I noticed a figure standing beneath a street lamp. Barefoot, silent, motionless. Her presence no longer startled me. It felt inevitable. She looked at me with the same calm she carried the night before, as if she knew what I had discovered. I approached her cautiously. She waited without speaking, giving me the unsettling impression that she knew my thoughts before I formed them. I asked who she was. She smiled gently, the kind of smile that belongs to someone who understands the answers you fear. She said she was not here to guide me, nor to protect me. She was here because a debt had reached its due date. Her tone held no threat. It carried certainty. I frowned, confused. I told her I had never seen her before. She replied that while I might not remember her, my life once changed hers. Her words took me back many years to a night I had long forgotten. I was younger then, passing through a different city. I remembered entering a grocery store moments before it closed. A young woman stood outside, barefoot, shivering, unable to pay for a loaf of bread. I paid for her purchase and left without expecting gratitude. It was a simple act I never mentioned again. The barefoot woman stepped closer and repeated the exact words I spoke that night. Words I had forgotten. She repeated them with the same tone I used. I felt my breath leave my body. She told me that I did not save her life. I altered its direction. She had been on the edge of giving up. That small act of kindness created a crack in her despair. She followed that crack like a path. She revealed that she had been watching my life ever since. Not out of obsession, out of obligation. She wanted to return something I gave her without knowing it. She explained that the night I paid for her bread, I unknowingly interrupted a decision she believed was final. That interruption became the seed of her transformation. She found purpose in the smallest proof that not all choices lead to darkness. I listened stunned. She continued. She said that people often think life punishes or rewards them directly. She believed differently. Sometimes the return comes through a path that does not resemble the action. My act had created a debt without intention. Her presence tonight was not coincidence. It was completion. She had waited for the precise moment I needed to see what I had forgotten about myself. I asked her why she remained barefoot. She replied that some journeys require remembering where they began. Shoes protect. Sometimes protection hides truth. She walked without them to never forget the moment she received a future she did not expect. Her bare feet were not a sign of poverty. They were reminders of humility. Then her expression shifted. She looked at me with a steadiness that made the night feel sacred. She said I had spent years believing love was about sacrifice. What I failed to see was that sacrifice without recognition becomes surrender. She came because I was about to step into a life that matched who I truly was. Her return did not signify rescue. It signified readiness. She told me that the night I was pushed out was not destruction. It was release. She warned that I was not at the end of something. I was at the entrance. Her final words lingered in the cold air. She said destiny does not knock. It waits until the door opens itself. When she stepped away from the street lamp, the snow swallowed her footsteps. She disappeared without urgency, as if her task was complete. I felt no fear, only clarity. I understood now. I had not met her twice. I had arrived at the moment she knew I would finally see her. Days passed, yet I did nothing. I made no calls. I filed no complaints. I spoke to no one about what I had discovered. I simply removed myself from the life that once depended on my silence. I did not seek revenge. I did not prepare a strategy. I understood something powerful. Sometimes the strongest blow is the absence of reaction. It leaves space for truth to reveal what it has been hiding. And truth, once visible, requires no assistance to dismantle illusions. My wife's world did not collapse with noise. It crumbled quietly, the way a structure built on fragile ground eventually buckles under its own weight. Rumors began to circulate. Her colleagues questioned her decisions. Investors noticed inconsistencies in financial reports she once handled confidently. The people who praised her ambition started to doubt her judgment. Conversations shifted behind her back. Invitations she once received eagerly were suddenly addressed to others. She tried to maintain her composure, but the same confidence that once impressed others now appeared as arrogance. Her voice, once admired, sounded strained. Her smile looked forced. The veneer of certainty that surrounded her began to crack. People sensed something was wrong long before they understood what it was. Authority can be imitated. Integrity cannot. The absence of the latter eventually exposes the performance of the former. Her sister, who once stood proudly beside her, withdrew. Loyalty between them dissolved the moment consequences appeared. The alliance built on mutual gain did not survive scrutiny. Her sister distanced herself, afraid of sinking with the same ship she helped steer. She stopped visiting. She stopped defending. Without an audience, her confidence vanished. It turned out her laughter had been sustained by borrowed power. My wife's mother, who once observed without interfering, became quiet. She no longer offered opinions or advice. She watched her daughter stumble through explanations she could not support. She recognized the moment her daughter stopped controlling the narrative and became controlled by it. Silence no longer protected her. It judged her. Her father confronted her about irregularities in several accounts. He did not raise his voice. He simply asked for clarification. She attempted excuses, but details betrayed her. Paper does not lie. The more she tried to justify, the more the story unraveled. He left the conversation without concluding it. His disappointment became the sentence she feared most. Some punishments are not declared. They are embodied. Professionally, cracks turned into fractures. Collaborators withdrew support. Emails once filled with proposals became polite refusals. Invitations disappeared. People chose distance without explanation. Success requires trust. Once trust evaporated, her influence dissolved with it. Her career did not end dramatically. It faded, one unanswered message at a time. Inside the home she once ruled, silence moved in. She paced hallways that once echoed with confidence. She checked her phone obsessively, waiting for someone to reassure her. No one did. The mirror she once admired now reflected uncertainty. She finally understood a lesson she ignored for years. Control without respect is temporary. Power without integrity is sand. It cannot withstand water, wind, or time. I watched none of this directly. News arrived through others, through moments I did not seek. Each detail confirmed something important. I did not destroy her. She dismantled herself. Everything she built relied on perception, not foundation. Perception shifted because truth no longer worked in her favor. She never feared losing me. She feared losing the image of herself she constructed through me. One evening, she sent a message asking if I would talk. The words lacked her usual command. She apologized without saying the word apology. She tried to explain without admitting responsibility. I read her message twice. Then I put the phone down. I felt no satisfaction. I felt no anger. I understood something deeper. Some endings do not require winners. They require witnesses. Her collapse was not my victory. It was the consequence of choices she once believed were invisible. I did not push. I stepped aside, and without me to lean against, her empire finally revealed what it always was. An illusion waiting for the wind. The morning after her message, I woke with a strange calmness in my chest. I expected to feel anger, grief, or triumph, yet none of these emotions visited me. What remained was clarity, a quiet certainty that my life no longer revolved around explanations, corrections, or attempts to earn space in a narrative that was never mine. I left the motel and walked with no destination in mind. The air felt lighter. The sky seemed wider. My steps carried a purpose I did not need to define. As I crossed a bridge, I sensed someone watching me. I turned and found her standing at the end of the path. The barefoot woman. She remained silent, waiting for me to approach. Her presence no longer startled me. It felt like the final sentence of a chapter 1 had already read. I walked toward her, expecting another revelation, perhaps another layer of truth. Instead, she simply looked into my eyes and bowed her head slightly, as if acknowledging a conclusion I had earned rather than received. I asked if this was the end of her presence in my life. She answered with a question. She asked whether I knew who I was now. The simplicity of her words carried the weight of my entire journey. I did not rush to answer. I took a moment to breathe and realized I no longer defined myself by the roles I once carried. I was not a husband seeking validation. I was not a man confused by affection disguised as control. I was someone who understood what silence can hide and what truth can reveal. The woman smiled, not a smile of approval, but recognition. She said she came because I once acted without expectation. I gave kindness without seeking reward. That act, simple and forgotten, changed the trajectory of her life. She had waited to return it when I would finally understand its meaning. She stepped back, and for the first time, her presence felt complete. Without another word, she turned and walked away. Her feet touched the ground softly, yet her departure echoed louder than her arrival. She disappeared into the morning light, leaving no trace, as if she had never belonged to the world I inhabited. I remained on the bridge for a long time, watching the river below move steadily, carrying everything it touched forward. I realized something essential. Healing is not the return to who we were. It is the acceptance of who we are becoming. The past no longer held authority over my identity. It had become a reference, not an anchor. I rented a small apartment in a different part of the city. I bought a secondhand desk, a comfortable chair, and a plant that needed little care but offered quiet beauty. I rebuilt my days slowly, without rushing toward outcomes. I reconnected with people who valued sincerity. Opportunities appeared, not because I sought them, but because they recognized someone who no longer negotiated his worth. In time, my wife tried to reach me again. She sent messages filled with nostalgia, memories, and questions she once believed I would answer. I read them without emotion. She had not lost a possession. She had exiled her advantage. My presence had been a shield she mistook for a burden. My absence revealed the truth she never wanted to see. She watched from a distance as my life grew steadier. She learned that respect cannot be coerced and partnership cannot be simulated. I never confronted her. I never revisited the house where everything unraveled. I did not need closure from her. Closure came the moment I stopped waiting for permission to continue. She became a spectator, not of my success, but of the version of herself she abandoned. Power once defined her identity. Now it defined her regret. I often walk along the same bridge where I last saw the barefoot woman. I do not expect a return. Some figures appear only when lives require adjustment. She was never a character in my story. She was the punctuation that allowed me to end a sentence and begin another. My journey did not give me revenge. It gave me recognition. I did not reclaim what I lost. I discovered what I never knew I possessed. And the ending no one predicted was not hers. It was mine. The morning arrived without warning, quiet and almost weightless, as if the night had been erased instead of concluded. I stood by the window of my new apartment, watching the city awaken. Cars moved slowly across wet streets. Pedestrians wrapped coats around themselves, and life continued without hesitation. There was no trace of the man I once was, the man who entered his home expecting affection and was instead escorted into exile. I realized something remarkable. The night that ended my marriage did not destroy me. It interrupted a pattern I was too blind to recognize. I walked outside, letting the cold air settle against my face. I expected thoughts of resentment to follow me, yet they remained behind like old clothes no longer worth wearing. Each breath felt like a beginning rather than a continuation. I found myself at the same bridge where the barefoot woman last appeared. The river beneath it moved confidently, carrying fragments of the world in one direction. I leaned against the railing, expecting silence to fill the space around me. Instead, I felt presence. I turned and saw her. The barefoot woman stood on the opposite side of the bridge, just as calm as before. Her face held no urgency, no triumph, no regret. She seemed to exist outside the rhythm of ordinary time. I approached, waiting for an explanation, an instruction, something to make sense of the journey she had dragged me into. She simply looked at me and nodded. She told me her purpose was complete. Not because I solved a mystery or confronted an enemy, but because I finally saw the structure of my life without borrowed beliefs. She said clarity is not given. It is recognized. I asked whether she would return. She shook her head. She explained that some figures appear only when paths diverge. Once the direction is chosen, they have no reason to remain. She stepped back as if preparing to dissolve into the morning. Before she left, she told me something I will never forget. Every blessing looks like a burden until someone loses it. Then she turned away. Her steps made no sound. She walked across the bridge until her presence became memory. I watched until the city swallowed her completely. I did not follow. I did not call after her. She belonged to a chapter that no longer governed me. Weeks unfolded. I adjusted to a life defined by choice rather than expectation. I bought a desk and began working again, this time without interruption or criticism. People reached out, not because I begged for attention, but because I carried a calm that drew respect. Relationships became simpler. Conversations became sincere. Every day felt like a room with open windows instead of locked doors. My wife never confronted me directly. Instead, she observed from a distance, waiting for an opportunity to restore what she once controlled. That moment never arrived. Her confidence, once untouchable, faltered. The silence she imposed on me became her only companion. She studied images of my new life the same way one studies a painting they once owned but never appreciated. She now understood what she had lost. I was not a weight dragging her down. I was the anchor that kept her grounded. Without me, ambition had no direction. Power had no witness. Pride had no ceiling. I did not rejoice in her regret. I had no desire to prolong her misery. The story did not end with my triumph or her defeat. It ended with truth. She did not discard a burden. She removed the one presence capable of protecting her from herself. My life did not begin anew. It continued without interruption, this time aligned with who I actually am. The barefoot woman did not save me. She simply returned what I misplaced: my peace.